Hi, welcome to this video series on the topic of GMAT quantitative reasoning section preparation. Today's topic is coordinate geometry for the data sufficiency type of questions. The quantitative reasoning section of our GMAT exam has two types of questions, problem solving and data sufficiency. Problem solving is where you have a question and 5 answer options. You choose the one that suits the best, and data sufficiency you are given one question and 2 statements along with it. You will have to see if the statements are enough to answer the question or not. So, let us get into it. These are the 5 answer options for for the data sufficiency part of the quantitative reasoning. They will be same for every data sufficiency question. Answer option A says statement 1 alone is sufficient, but statement 2 alone is not sufficient, and answer option B is when statement 2 alone is sufficient, but statement 1 alone is not sufficient. Answer option C says both statements together are sufficient, but neither statement alone is sufficient. Answer option D says each statement alone is sufficient, and answer option E is when statements 1 and 2 together are also not sufficient to answer the question. So, let us look at some questions. This is the first question. Is line L parallel to the y axis? Okay. So, you know the equation of y axis. This is the x axis, this is the y axis. The equation of y axis is x is equals to 0. So, the first statement says that equation of the line L is x is equals to 4. So, x is equals to 4 is obviously parallel to the x is equals to 0. So, yes, statement 1 is sufficient to answer the question, is line L parallel to the y axis. Its an answer is yes, it is. And option 2 gives us 2 points on the line L. So, when 2 points are given, you can easily calculate the equation of the line by using the 2 point formula, and the equation will come out to be x is equals to 4 again, and therefore, it is parallel to y axis, which is x is equals to 0. Therefore, this information is also sufficient to answer the question on itself. So, statement 1 alone is sufficient to answer the question, and statement 2 alone is sufficient to answer the question. Answer option is D. Therefore, D is the correct answer. Let us look at the next question now. In the regular coordinate system below, what is the area of the triangular region AED? Okay, they are asking us the area of this region AED. It is a triangle AED. Okay. So, the statement 1 tells us the area of ABCD is 12. ABCD, that is this rectangular region, the area is 12, which is equals to the side of this rectangle AB is equals to 2k minus k, it is k, and the side of this side BC is equals to k 4k minus k, which is 3k. So, you can say, you can easily calculate the value of k coming out to be 2, and for we need to find the area of the triangle AED. Area of the triangle AED will be half base into height. Base is nothing but here 4k minus k, A to D, 4k minus k, which is 3k, into height, that is E to this point parallel to D. When you drop a perpendicular from E, it falls onto this line. So, it is equals to 3k minus k, which is 2k. So, you can easily calculate the area of triangle AED. You do not need to do any further calculations. You can directly say that it is sufficient to answer the question. Now, option 2, statement 2 tells us that AD is equals to 6. What is AD? AD is the base of the triangle, also side of the rectangle, and it is also equals to 4k minus k, that is 3k, and all you have to do is substitute this, you can easily calculate the value of k, and you can substitute this into the equation that for triangle AED, half base into height, and therefore you will get your answer. Therefore, this information is also sufficient to answer the question. When two statements are sufficient, that is statement 1 alone is sufficient and statement 2 alone is sufficient, the answer option will be D. Let us look at the next question. In the xy plane, line A and line B have the same slope. If the y-intercept of line A is -1, what is the y-intercept of line B? Okay. They are saying that line A is parallel to line B because they have the same slope. So, statement 1 is telling us x-intercept of line A is -1. Okay. So, you have the x-intercept of line A and you also have the y-intercept of line A. You can calculate the equation of line A, and thus you will have the slope also. You can also calculate the slope also of line A. Slope you can calculate, but you cannot calculate the y-intercept of line B, which is what they are asking us to find, because you do not know any point on that line. Okay. So, therefore, this is insufficient to answer the question. Let us look at statement 2. Statement 2 tells us B passes through the point 10, 20. So, what do we know about line B? We know that it passes through 10, 20, but you do not know anything about its slope, or you do not have any other point or any other point to calculate the equation or the slope of this line. So, therefore, you cannot find this y-intercept of B. Therefore, this is insufficient. Now, let us look at when we combine both these statements, statement 1 and statement 2. We know the slope of line B from statement 1, and we know one point which it passes through in statement 2. Therefore, you will know the equation of line B, and therefore, you will know the slope of line, the y-intercept of line B. Therefore, together these are sufficient to answer the question. When two statements alone are not sufficient to answer the question on their own, but statement 1 and 2 together are sufficient to answer the question, answer is option C. Let us move to the next question now. In the rectangular coordinate system, lines M and N cross at the origin. Is line M perpendicular to line N? Okay. There are two lines which cross, they are asking if it is perpendicular. First statement says that if M is the slope of line M is y, and the slope of line N is z, and minus yz is equals to 1, which implies yz is equals to minus 1, and this satisfies the need for the condition for which two lines will be parallel. Their slopes, product of their slopes is minus 1. Therefore, this information is sufficient to tell that yes, these two lines are perpendicular to each other, and M has a slope of minus 1 and N passes through minus x comma minus x. So, therefore, since M has a slope of minus 1, you know the slope of M, and you want the slope of N to find out whether the product of the slopes are minus 1. You have one point that it passes through, that is 0, 0, and it passes through minus x comma minus x. So, you can easily calculate the slope. Slope will come out to be minus x minus 0 divided by minus x minus 0, which is equals to 1. Therefore, the product of these slopes is minus 1. Therefore, you can easily tell whether or not they are perpendicular. That is also sufficient. So, when statement alone is sufficient to answer the question and statement 2 alone is sufficient to answer the question, the answer becomes answer option D. Therefore, this is D. Let us move to the next question now. Find y-intercept of line L. Line L passes through exactly 2 quadrants. Okay. So, you have 4 quadrants in this rectangular coordinate system. This is the x axis, this is the y axis. So, when they are saying that line L passes through exactly 2 coordinates, that means either the line is parallel to x axis or it is parallel to y axis. Only in those two conditions will the lines be passing through only two quadrants. But they are asking us what is the y intercept of line L. It can be any of these four lines, dotted lines that we had drawn here. So, y intercept can be positive, negative, or it can be 0. So, we do not know, it can be infinity, we do not know whether or not what exactly is the y intercept of line A. Statement 1 is insufficient to answer the question. And second statement says that line L passes through any two quadrants that are does not pass through any two quadrants that are adjacent. That means that it passes through only the center. It cannot pass through any other quadrant. So, you know that it passes through the center. It can be this or it can be this, but it has to pass through the origin. So, therefore, you know that it has to pass through 0, 0. Therefore, y intercept will be what? Intercept will be nothing but 0, because it is crossing the y axis at 0, 0. Therefore, this alone is sufficient to answer the question. So, statement 1 alone is not sufficient to answer the question, but statement 2 alone is sufficient to answer the question. So, the answer is answer option B. Let us move to the next question now. S is a set of points in the plane. How many distinct triangles can be drawn that have 3 points in S as vertices? Okay. So, they are telling us S is a set of points, but they are not telling us how many points here, and they are asking us to find that out of these points how many triangles can be formed. So, for triangle to be formed, there should be 3 points that are not on the same line. So, the first, what does first statement give us? Give us that distinct points in S is 5 and no 3 points. So, this in itself only tells us the number of points that S has, but it does not tell us how many points are linear, are collinear, and how many points are not collinear. Therefore, it is insufficient to answer the question. How many triangles can be formed, and in statement 2 it says that no 3 of the points in S are collinear. If the points in S are not collinear, any 3 of them, so they can form triangles, but we do not know the number of points in S by basing on statement 2 alone. Therefore, this is also insufficient to answer the question. What we need together is 1 plus 2 together. What do we get? We get that S has 5 points and there no 3 points are collinear. So, this is enough to say that the number of triangles will be equal to 5C3. You just have to select any 3 points from the 5. So, therefore, this statement alone is sufficient. You do not need to solve for it. You can say directly that this is sufficient to answer the question. Therefore, when statement 1 and statement 2 alone are not sufficient to answer the question, but statement 1 and statement 2 together are sufficient to answer the question, the answer option becomes C. Let us move to the next question now. If each side of a square is parallel to one of the rectangular coordinates, is the origin found inside the square? Okay. These are your axes and they are asking whether the origin is lying inside the square or outside the square. Okay. So, statement 1 tells us one of the vertex of the square is 5 comma minus 1. So, let us say this is 5 and this is minus 1. So, this 5 comma minus 1 is one of the vertices of the square. So, the square can be drawn like this or it can be drawn like this, or there are multiple more options too which you can draw. I am just giving you 2 options where you can see in one the center origin lies inside the square and in another the origin does not lie inside the square. So, for definitely statement 1 alone is insufficient to answer the question. Now, the coordinates of one of the vectors vertex of the square are minus 4 comma minus 1. Let us say this is minus 4 and this is minus 1. So, you can say the point is somewhere here -4 comma -1, and it's the same again. You can draw a square with origin lying outside it, or else you can draw a square with origin lying inside of it. But so this statement 2 alone is also insufficient to answer the question. Now let us look at statement 1 and statement 2 together. Okay. So what do we know? Let us erase this. So you draw your two axes here. If they are saying that 5 comma -1 is one of the points, and -4 comma -1 is also one of the points, we can say that for sure that this is one of the sides joining those two, but at the same time again the square can be formed like this towards the downward direction, or else it can be formed like this towards the upward direction. So either way you can have either the origin inside or outside of the squares that are formed. Therefore 1 plus 2, statements 1 plus 2 are also insufficient to answer the question. So when statements 1 and 2 together are insufficient to answer the question, the answer option becomes E, where statements 1 and 2 both together are not sufficient to answer the question. Let us move to the next question now. In the xy plane, point r comma s lies on a circle with center at the origin. What is the value of r square plus s square? Okay. There is a circle with whose center is the origin. So this is our random circle with center at origin. Okay. Now they are asking us what is the value of r square plus s square is equals to what? The circle, if the circle has a radius of 2, that means that under root of r square, that is r square plus s square, will be equals to 2, which means r square plus s square is 2 square, that is 4. You can therefore you can calculate r square plus s square. Therefore this information is sufficient to answer the question. And they are saying that point root 2 comma minus root 2 lies on the circle. If root 2 comma minus root 2 lie on the circle, the distance from the origin, that is center of the circle, to the distance of a point on the circle is always going to be its radius. So so we can say that 0 minus root 2 plus 0 minus of minus root 2 whole square, this whole square is equals to root of r square plus s square. They are both equal to the radius. So this will come out to be 2 into 2, 4, and which means that it is equals to 2 is equals to root of r square plus s square. Therefore r square plus s square is equals to 2 square, that is 4. Therefore this alone is also sufficient to answer the question. So answer option is D, when both statements alone are sufficient to answer the question. At how many points does the graph of the quadratic equation cut x axis? Okay, and your statement 1 says sum of the roots is 5 and statement 2 says product of the roots is 6. So a quadratic equation is in the form of ax square plus bx plus c is equals to 0. It can also be written as x square plus b by ax plus c by a is equals to 0. Okay. So to find out how many points does the graph of the equation cut the x axis, we need an entire equation, we need b by a and we need c by a. So the first statement says sum of the roots is equals to 5. So which means that minus b by a is equals to 5, therefore b by a will be equals to minus 5. But we do not know anything of c by a is equals to what. Therefore this statement alone is insufficient to answer the question. Let us see the statement 2. Statement 2 says product of the roots. Product of the roots is equals to 6, which means which is equals to c by a. Therefore c by a is equals to 6, but then we do not know anything about b by a in this statement. Therefore this is also insufficient to answer the question. Now looking at statement 1 and 2 together, you have sum of the roots, that is b by a will be equals to minus 5 and product of the roots given c by a is equals to 6. Therefore you can write the equation as x square minus 5x plus 6 is equals to 0, and you can find the points. This will be equals to x minus 3 into x minus 2 is equals to 0. Therefore you are able to solve for x Therefore, this together is sufficient, these two statements together is sufficient to answer your question. So, when statement 1 alone is insufficient, statement 2 alone is insufficient, but statement 1 plus 2 together sufficient to answer the question, answer option becomes C. C is your answer. So, those were some sample questions on the topic of coordinate geometry for the type of questions that is data sufficiency. Hope you understood them. Thank you for watching.